My sister gave me this massive dark coffee table when she was done with it. So let's paint it and make it look new again. I started like I always do. I cleaned the table with a crud cutter and an old damp rag, trying to remove all of the oil, grime, and dirt that could be on it. I had visions of sanding it down to bare wood and whitewashing it to make a light wood finish, but when I sanded the drawer down to bare wood, I easily sanded through the veneer, and I think this is the thinnest veneer I have ever seen. Do you see those spotty and lighter areas on the edges? That's MDF under the thinnest wood veneer ever. So that kind of ruined those plans, and I took a step back from it for a while. I recently learned about a carbide scraper and how you can use it to scrape off stain or paint to get to the wood underneath. So I bought one and tried it out. And check this out. Look how fast it gets down to almost bare wood. The worst thing about this is that it takes a lot of muscle and energy, so I asked my husband to step in and help me with some of it. But still, it took 13 minutes for us to get the top scraped off. That is so fast compared to sanding or chemical stripper. Then I started scraping off the side, and immediately I could tell that it wasn't wood underneath. There was a thick layer of like wood-colored paint with MDF or something underneath it. So there went my plans to have a wood top. Then I sanded the top with 150 grit sandpaper to smooth everything out. That only took a few minutes. I'm starting to think that using a carbide scraper to get most of the finish off and then using a sander lightly after is the way to go, at least on flat surfaces. Then I scuff sanded the legs to help the paint stick to them. I used a coarse grit foam sponge and a squishy interface pad and my sander to get into most of the curves on those legs. Man, I love that sander and those foam sponges. Some of the crevices were a little bit too small to get the sander into though, so I had to do a little bit of hand sanding with the coarse grit foam sponge. But I am so grateful to have the sander so I didn't have to do all of it by hand. After the whole coffee table was scuff sanded, I vacuumed up the dust and used a tack cloth to remove any remaining dust. Then we took it outside and sprayed it with a couple of coats of Clear Shellac. I planned to use a lighter color of paint, and I was really worried that there would be bleed-through staining issues, so I primed it all really good with Clear Shellac to block those stains. And also, Clear Shellac helps my paint stick, so I love Clear Shellac. Then we brought it back inside and let it dry overnight. The next day, I mixed up this blue paint that I had tinted years ago to match a color I mixed up. I turned it into homemade chalk paint by mixing calcium carbonate powder with some water and then mixing that into the latex paint. I added a little bit more water and mixed everything really well. I tested my sprayer settings and then I sprayed a coat of paint onto the table. When the paint was dry, I found a couple of spots that needed filled with wood filler, so I did that and then I let the wood filler dry and then I sanded those spots smooth. Then I sprayed another coat of paint and then I came back with a paintbrush and the paint to get into the crevices on the legs a little bit better. But when I came back after that, there was a strong bleed-through stain on a leg. I hate when that happens. We considered our options and decided to take it back outside and spray on more shellac all over it and then let it dry. When we came back to it, I sprayed another coat of paint and guess what? There was still bleed through. So I brushed some bin shellac primer onto that spot again. The bin shellac primer is tinted white, so you can tell if bleed through is blocked or not, usually. Then I sprayed some more paint over it the next day and it seemed okay. So I moved on to top coating the chalk paint. I emptied out the paint sprayer, but I didn't clean it, and then I put some water-based polyurethane in it in a semi-gloss sheen. I adjusted my sprayer settings and sprayed a coat of polyurethane all over. And when I came back, can you guess it? There was a bleed-through stain again. It seemed like it was coming through a crack though, so I put some caulk on it, let it dry, and then I brushed some bench shellac primer onto it again. Ay. I can't believe how many times I had to touch this spot up. This time I used a small paintbrush to touch up the paint in that area though. While that dried, I sanded the rest of the coffee table by hand with a fine grit foam sponge to make everything feel smooth. I didn't use the sander because I didn't want to sand through the paint on accident. I cleaned the dust and sprayed more polyurethane on, and guess what? I finally had no more bleed-through problems. It only took me how many tries? So here's what it looked like before, and here's what it looks like now. It's still a pretty big coffee table, but it doesn't feel so heavy, and it totally brightens up the space. Once it has cured, we'll be listing it for sale locally. What do you think of the new look? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you liked this video. Are you confused and not sure where to start with your furniture makeover? Don't worry, I got your back. Click the link in my comment to download our free painting checklist so you can paint your furniture as if you hired a professional to do it.